including FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover and Lewis Strauss. That evening, at the Georgetown home of Herbert and Anne Marks, he contemplated his options. Herbert was not only his lawyer but one of his closest friends, and Herbert's wife, Anne Wilson Marks, had once been his secretary at Los Alamos. That night Anne observed that he seemed to be in an almost despairing state of mind. Yet, after much discussion, Oppenheimer concluded, perhaps as much in resignation as conviction, that no matter how stacked the deck, he could not let the charges go unchallenged. So, with Herb's guidance, he drafted a letter addressed to Dear Lewis. In it, Oppenheimer noted that Strauss had encouraged him to resign. "You put to me as a possibly desirable alternative that I request termination of my contract as a consultant to the Atomic Energy Commission and thereby avoid an explicit consideration of the charges." Oppenheimer said he had earnestly considered this option. But, under the circumstances, he continued, this course of action would mean that I accept and concur in the view that I am not fit to serve this government that I have now served for some 12 years. This I cannot do. If I were thus unworthy, I could hardly have served our country as I have tried, or been the director of our Institute for Advanced Study in Princeton, or have spoken, as on more than one occasion I have found myself speaking, in the name of our science and our country. By the end of the evening, Robert was exhausted and despondent. After several drinks, he retired upstairs to the guest bedroom. A few minutes later, Anne, Herbert, and Robert's wife, Kitty, who had accompanied him to Washington, heard a terrible crash. Racing upstairs, they found the bedroom empty and the bathroom door closed. "I couldn't get it open," Anne said, "and I couldn't get a response from Robert." He had collapsed on the bathroom floor, and his unconscious body was blocking the door. They gradually forced it open, pushing Robert's limp form to one side. When he revived, he sure was mumbly, Anne recalled. He said he had taken one of Kitty's prescription sleeping pills. "Don't let him go to sleep," a doctor warned over the phone. So for almost an hour, until the doctor arrived, they walked Robert back and forth, coaxing him to swallow sips of coffee. Robert's beast had pounced. The ordeal that would end his career of public service and, ironically, both enhance his reputation and secure his legacy had begun. The road Robert traveled from New York City to Los Alamos, New Mexico, from obscurity to prominence, led him to participation in the great struggles and triumphs in science, social justice, war, and Cold War of the 20th century. His journey was guided by his extraordinary intelligence, his parents, his teachers at the Ethical Culture School, and his youthful experiences. Professionally, his development began in the 1920s in Germany, where he learned quantum physics, a new science that he loved and proselytized. In the 1930s, at the University of California, Berkeley, while building the most prominent center for its study in the United States, he was moved by the consequences of the Great Depression at home and the rise of fascism abroad to work actively with friends, many of them fellow travelers and communists, in the struggle to achieve economic and racial justice. Those years were some of the finest of his life. That they were so easily used to silence his voice a decade later is a reminder of how delicately balanced are the democratic principles we profess, and how carefully they must be guarded. The agony and humiliation that Oppenheimer endured in 1954 were not unique during the McCarthy era. But as a defendant, he was incomparable. He was America's Prometheus, the father of the atomic bomb, who had led the effort to wrest from nature the awesome fire of the sun for his country in time of war. Afterwards, he had spoken wisely about its dangers and hopefully about its potential benefits, and then, near despair, critically about the proposals for nuclear warfare being adopted by the military and promoted by academic strategists. What are we to make of a civilization which has always regarded ethics as an essential part of human life, but which has not been able to talk about the prospect of killing almost everybody except in prudential and game-theoretical terms? In the late 1940s, as U.S.-Soviet relations deteriorated, Oppenheimer's persistent desire to raise such tough questions about nuclear weapons greatly troubled Washington's national security establishment.